Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to tell you about 23 nonfiction books that I would like to read in 2023. The only thing that I may love more than reading is planning my reading, especially planning my reading for an upcoming year. There is just something about looking ahead to that fresh start, thinking about what goals I want to accomplish the following year and how I'm going to go about achieving those goals that just brings me so much joy. And I've decided that next year in 2023, I want to lean more into reading my number one favorite genre, nonfiction. Not too long ago, I made a video talking about a bunch of different nonfiction books that I personally think I waited far too long to read. They were all very popular nonfiction books that I put off reading for no good reason. I mainly put them off because they were so hyped up. In case you missed that video, I will link it for you in the description box below and up in the cards. But in that video, I said in no uncertain terms that I want to stop doing that. So that is one of my goals for 2023. I definitely want to pick up popular nonfiction books while they're popular, but I want to do more than that. I also want to go back and read a bunch of popular nonfiction books of previous years that I haven't read yet. So those popular types of nonfiction books, I would say, make up about half of this list of 23 books, but then the other half is made up of books that I've just been meaning to read for a while. Some of them are from my shelves. 2 of them are books that my husband has wanted me to read for a really long time. I really love crossing things off of a list, so I feel like the most effective way to get me to finally read some of these books is to put them on a list like this. The first book that I definitely want to read next year is called Inheritance, a memoir of genealogy, paternity, and love by Dani Shapiro. This is a memoir about a woman who discovers via Ancestry.com that the man she thought was her biological father actually is not. And then she goes on a whole journey to uncover some of her family's secrets. I've heard great things about this one. I cannot believe I haven't read it yet. The second nonfiction book I know I want to read in 2023 is Born a Crime, Stories of a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah. This is a very popular celebrity memoir in which the now former host of The Daily Show talks about how he was literally born as evidence of a crime. His father was white and his mother was black, and it was illegal for them to be together at the time of his birth, and so he was born as evidence of a crime. And this is his coming of age story. I know so many people loved this, and I'm really excited to finally get to it. The third book on my list is another memoir, but this is one that I have been hearing about since before I even started my channel. It was very popular on BookTube when I got started watching BookTube. It's called Lit by Mary Karr, and this is actually her second of 3 total memoirs. In this one, she discusses her struggles with alcoholism and depression, and generally how she got through a very dark time. But the next book I want to make sure I read in 2023 is another one from my shelves, and it's quite literally about a dark time. It's called Dark Skies, A Journey into the Wild Night by Tiffany Francis. And in this book, the author discusses her travels around Europe, exploring the concept of nocturnal landscapes, and delving into the connection that human beings have with the night sky. The next 2 books are ones that my husband insisted I put on my 2023 list. He's been wanting me to read both of these for a really long time, so I just went ahead and borrowed both of them from his shelves so I can finally do that. The first one is called Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Grann. This book talks about the investigation into the mysterious deaths of members of the Osage tribe and the simultaneous rise of the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. And the second book that my husband wanted me to read is called Nothing to Envy, Ordinary Lives in North Korea by Barbara Demick. And this book illustrates everyday life in North Korea through the stories of 6 citizens over a 15-year period. I know that my husband thought that both of these were absolutely fantastic. I know other people did as well, so it's about time I read them. During Nonfiction November, over on the Nonfiction November Instagram page that I run, I made a reel asking people to help me choose what history books I should pick up next. And the next 2 books that I'm putting on my 2023 list are the 2 books that got picked the most in the comment section of that reel. The first one is Liar, Temptress, Soldier, Spy: 4 Women Undercover in the Civil War by Karen Abbott. And this book discusses 4 different women who were involved in the American Civil War in different capacities. Admittedly, American history isn't my favorite topic, but I did really enjoy this author's previous book called Sin in the Second City, and a lot of people out there thought I should read this, so I'm going to. And people also voted that I read The Horde, How the Mongols Changed the World by Marie Favereau. This is the epic story of one of the most influential empires in history. This book was shortlisted for the Cundill History Prize last year, so I am sure it's going to be amazing. But one of those popular nonfiction books that I know I need to get to next year is Reading Lolita in Tehran, a memoir in books by Azar Nafisi. This is the story of how the author, for 2 years in Iran, led a reading group full of female students in which they read and discussed forbidden works of Western literature. I think this one is more important than ever right now. The 10th book on my list is another one about reading. It's called Unfinished Business, Notes of a Chronic Rereader by Vivian Gornick. This book is a celebration of returning to books over and over and over again. I love rereading books, but with a few notable exceptions, I rarely make time for it, so I'm actually hoping to be inspired by this book. You may have noticed this, but the vast majority of books on this list are in the backlist, meaning that they were published quite a while ago, but there is one 2022 release that I'm putting on my list for next year because I just cannot believe that I haven't gotten to it yet. It's called An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us by Ed Yong. And this book invites us to perceive the world the way that other animals do. I loved Ed Yong's last book called I Contain Multitudes. It was all about microbes. I actually reviewed it here on the channel a long time ago. I'll link that video down below and up in the cards in case you haven't seen it. But that book was amazing. It made me geek out. I have never been more interested in science than when I was reading that book, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about this newest one. I'm so excited to read this. Book number 12 on my list is an extremely popular memoir, to say the least. It's called Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed. This is the author's story of hiking 1,000 miles after the loss of her mother. This one, as you may know, was turned into a movie. It seems like everyone has read this. Some people seem to really love it. Other people seem to absolutely hate it. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it, but this author's collection of advice columns called Tiny Beautiful Things really touched my heart earlier this year, so I at least want to give this one a try. Another really popular nonfiction book that I'm finally going to read next year is Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly. This is a history book about a remarkable group of Black women who played a pivotal role in the American space program. I know I'm going to be the last person to read this. I will also be the last person to see the movie that was based on this book, but better late than never. The next book on my list is by the author of one of my favorite nonfiction books, so it's safe to say I think I'm going to at least enjoy this one. It's called Complications, A Surgeon's Notes on an Imperfect Science by Atul Gawande. This was his first book. It's all about his surgical training and his views on medicine. His most recent book, Being Mortal, it's not just a book that I love, it's a book that absolutely changed my life, and I've been meaning to finish the books in his back catalog for a really long time. One of the most popular nonfiction books of 2020 is the 15th book on my list, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. In this book, the author argues that the divides we're seeing in modern-day America are actually the result of an invisible caste system. I've heard nothing but glowing reviews of this one, and I've been meaning to read it for far too long. And the same goes for Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, which is a memoir written by the lead singer of the band Japanese Breakfast. In this book, she discusses her own identity as a Korean American, but also what it was like losing her mother to cancer when the author was in her mid-20s. Truly cannot believe that I haven't read this yet. But a backlist memoir that I would finally like to read is Garlic and Sapphires, The Secret Life of a Critic in Disguise by Ruth Rachel. This is the author's story of going undercover in restaurants while she was working as a food critic for the New York Times. We read the early chapters of this one in my circle over on the Threadable app, and I was geeking out pretty much the whole time. I was getting so excited. I had so much to say about it. Those chapters are still up in my circle. I'll link that below for you if you want to go check them out. But it was essentially like Mrs. Doubtfire meets Kitchen Confidential. And now I need to read the rest of it. Now, I've read and reviewed here on my channel a couple of books about mushrooms in the past, but somehow I still haven't read Entangled Life: How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures by Merlin Sheldrake. This is a book all about the world of fungi, which is a topic that I already know I'm intensely interested in. I went on my very first mushroom walk earlier this year. It was awesome. So I already know I'm going to love this. Another nature book I've been meaning to get to is The Botany of Desire, A Plant's Eye View of the World by Michael Pollan. This book dissects the reciprocal relationships between humans and domesticated plants. I've never read any of his books before, and I decided I would start with this one, even if it is a little dated. I would also really love to watch the documentary they made based on this book after I'm done reading it. Book number 20 on this list is a Pulitzer Prize winner. The Gulf, The Making of an American Sea by Jack Emerson Davis is a history of this region from the Pleistocene up until the modern day. I was lucky enough to get to review this author's latest book. It was on the Bald Eagle for the Christian Science Monitor. That book was excellent, and it made me want to read this book even more. Surprisingly enough, I've only ever read one book by Svetlana Alexievich, even though I would very much like to read all of her books. So I thought it was a smart idea to put at least one of her books on my list for next year. The one I selected for 2023 is Voices from Chernobyl: The Oral History of a Nuclear Disaster. This book is a collection of interviews from survivors and people who were otherwise involved. The last two books on my 2023 list are both memoirs. The first one is one of those very popular ones. I am definitely late to the party. It's called I Am Malala. This is the author's story of using a blog to speak out against the Taliban, refusing to comply when they banned girls from attending school, and how she narrowly survived when they shot her in retaliation. She is such an inspiration, and I am so excited that I am finally going to be reading this. And then the final nonfiction book on my 2023 list is I Am, 17 Brushes with Death by Maggie O'Farrell. This was a very popular memoir here on BookTube after it was first released. It's all about a number of different near-death experiences that the author went through. I've never read anything by this author before. I know her fiction is quite popular, but of course, I thought I would start with her nonfiction. So those are my highest priority nonfiction reads for 2023. These definitely won't be all of the nonfiction books that I read next year. I have plans to read a lot of nonfiction in 2023. There are also some amazing sounding nonfiction books that are due to be released in 2023, and I want to read some of those as well. But I'm going to work extremely hard to get through this entire list, meaning that I will probably be reading about 2 of these per month in order to get through the entire list. But I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. Have you read any of these books? I imagine you have, since a lot of them are very popular. Do you have any suggestions of where I should start with this list? Are you interested in reading any of these books yourself? And also let me know what books are on your 2023 nonfiction reading list. All the books that I talked about today, as well as any other links that I promised you, will be linked for you in the description box below. If you're on a mobile device, just tap the title of this video and that will expand for you. And at the bottom of that exact same description box, you'll see links to everywhere you can find me around the internets, like Goodreads and Instagram, the 2 places where I'm the most active, in case you would like to keep up with what I am reading and writing about right now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.